This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is March 20th, 2025. And today we have a very special guest, Dan Noël. And before we get started, I just wanted to ask everyone, except for the speaker, to mute themselves. I'm going ahead and muting everyone who's not speaking right now. And to abide by our guidelines, which I will read shortly. Um, Part of the guidelines is to let the speaker speak uninterrupted, and to not interrupt. We will, following Dan Noël's presentation, we will have a Q&A. You will be allowed to raise your electronic hand, and I will call on you in order. If you cannot electronic hand or can't figure it out, put it in the chat that you have a question, and there will be no accusations allowed, no personal comments allowed. And just basically being civil and polite. And before we begin, I just wanted to mention the views and thoughts and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Boston 9/11 Truth. The material and information presented here is for general information and educational purposes only. The Boston 9/11 Truth name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. Boston 9/11 Truth aims to inspire and promote action by the truth advocates who support them and their efforts. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dan Noël, who has been very active in the truth movement. So Dan, take it and tell us a little more about yourself and your background and how you got involved in 9/11 Truth.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm Dan Noël. I got involved in 9/11 in the mid-2000s. At the time, I was very active in many liberal causes. I was also an engineer, a pretty good one, by the way. So when I started to understand 9/11, it shocked me that the liberals were doing nothing about it, even though they were complaining of just about every policy that 9/11 caused, starting with unending wars and impoverization. So quickly I became concerned that just about every watchdog that could open their mouth about 9/11 would not do it. And I became de facto a self-made expert in the censorship of 9/11. So without further ado, let me try to share my screen. You should see now the layout of my Outlook. We are going to start the slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Here's the Oh, we are past the title already. The presentation is entitled Smashing Conspiracism. Why should we smash conspiracism? Why should we smash anything anyway? Well, what is conspiracism? It's a contraction of conspiracy theorism, which is the fabrication and propagation of conspiracy theories. The people who engage in that activity are conspiracy theorists or conspiracists in short. A conspiracy theory exists in relation to one event or a set of events that carry a very toxic emotional level and that affect a large population. The conspiracy theory is an alternative version of the event, meaning that mainstream media would never talk about it. And it is an extreme analysis of that event, meaning that universities would not even consider it because it is so much more bizarre and so much scarier than the event in question that if it was true, good people would become evil and vice versa. And if a large number of people subscribe to a conspiracy theory, the Western civilization as a whole would be shattered in pieces. As an example, you may never heard that one. Even experienced conspiracists don't know that one. The Bible, the Christian Bible, which is one of the core supports of the Western system of thought, is a masterpiece of a four-letter word. Here it is. There's a complete ontology behind it, believe it or not. The idea is that a psychopath who reads the Bible learns a message that he doesn't learn otherwise. He learns how normal people are different from him. And when a psychopath knows that, he can imitate normal people, he can become their friend, he can earn their trust. And if many psychopaths band together, they may even form a ruling class over normal people. The result may be good or bad for the psychopath, but it will never be good for the normal people. The capper of that crippled ontology is that the clergy are part of the problem because they preach psychopathic garbage without knowing it. Now, by this time, even the atheists in the audience are laughing and finding this conspiracy ridiculous, and they'll be right. However, we are talking of very extreme discourse that in the last few years has become problematic. 2020 was a turning point with a pandemic that caught by surprise the political and medical authorities. You may remember, if you're old enough, that Bill Gates at times seemed like he was the only man who had some idea as to what ought to be done. The conspiracists were active. This is what they were saying. COVID-19 doesn't exist, or if it does, it's no more dangerous than the flu. So what about the lockdowns, shutting down the economy except for war, food, fuel, and other essential activities? That's evil. Ignore the protection measures. And when it comes time for election, tell representatives that you don't like these policies. Well, the results were predictable. That conspiracism related to COVID-19 is almost impossible to refute. It has exacerbated the mortality. It made the West take much longer than authoritarian countries like China or even Cuba to get past COVID-19, and the impoverishment triggered by the safety measures could only get worse. In other words, conspiracism has turned into a danger to the Western civilization as we know it, and therefore a threat to humanity. This is why reasonable people ought to smash it. And of course, a good place to smash anything like this is the safe haven, which happens to be Building 7's destruction. It so happens that Building 7 has spurred conspiracy theories that are different from all the others. They are not just very scary and very bizarre, they are also seductive and they are addictive. Building 7 as a way to force people into conspiracism against their will. It is a safe haven where conspiracists take refuge when they have lost an argument. It is the base from which all conspiracies are justified. Now, it didn't have to be that way. Television could have prevented Building 7's conspiracism, but they did not. Universities could have done it. Scholars in sociology, they did not. Fact checkers, skeptics, you name it. Nobody has tackled the conspiracy theories of Building 7 head on, meaning that the whole world's population has been left vulnerable to conspiracies that are seductive and addictive. And before we continue, we have to keep in mind here that the responsibility for Building 7's conspiracism, and by extension to conspiracism as a whole, is largely in television's camp. Television could have avoided the prosperity of conspiracy theories that we have experienced over the last 10, 20 years. Anyway, let's look at Building 7. The context of 9/11 is the terror attacks of 9/11 and their key episode. The episode of 9/11 that killed the most people, that caused the most destruction, that really terrorized everybody all around the world. Well, of course, we are talking of the Twin Towers in the World Trade Center, an iconic area known all around the world. They were the tallest structures when they were built. Tens of thousands of people worked there, and this is what happened to them on the day of 9/11. They were disintegrated. And it was not just any kind of destruction. It was a complete surprise. It was sudden. It was rapid. It was complete. It was a disintegration, as this picture shows. And there were still a couple of thousand of people who were disintegrated together with the building. If it was not enough, hundreds of millions of people saw it live on television. You'll ask me what that has to do with Building 7. Well, we are talking about World Trade Center Building 7. Indeed, World Trade Center Building number 7 was also disintegrated on 9/11, like the Twin Towers. If we were in a live audience, I would ask a show of hands of anyone being aware of it for a long time. And don't tell anybody, but that's a trick to detect how many conspiracists are in the audience. And then I would ask how many people remember it from when it happened, on the day of 9/11 or a few days or a few weeks later. And we would find that extremely few people are aware of it since 9/11. As smart as the conspiracists are, they did not notice Building 7 when it was destroyed. Anyway, just as a refresher, the short story of Building 7 is that 7 hours after the Twin Towers destruction, Building number 7 self-destructed suddenly. At this point, I would ask if anybody is refreshing his memory, and the answer would usually be no. So one thing we have to note about Building 7 is that extremely few people took note when it destructed itself. So let's find out what happened. The story is simple. The Twin Towers, when they destroyed themselves, ejected steel all over the place. Some of it hit neighboring structures, and some of these structures is called fire that apply to all the World Trade Center buildings. And Building 7 disintegrated itself after 7 hours due to those fires. The destruction was sudden, it was complete, and took only about 7 seconds. This is what the experts from the United States government established 7 years later. This is arguably the largest accident in the history of structural engineering, and it's not difficult to understand, and it's worth hearing a couple of times in your life. Yet, because television didn't let the public know about it in a timely fashion, relatively few people know about it even today. Anyway, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so here's the World Trade Center before 9/11. And as you remember, Osama bin Laden takes credit for disintegrating the Twin Towers with 2 airplanes. Well, we have to correct the number of skyscrapers from 2 to 3, taking into account Building number 7, which we are pointing to now. And this is not a conspiracy theory. And we have to ask again why TV would not bother with it. Would it be because Building 7 is so small? Well, it does look small compared to the Twin Towers, but it's the average downtown Manhattan building, meaning that anywhere else, it would be very noticeable. And in most large cities, it would be the tallest structure around. Why wouldn't television pay attention to it? Anyway, let's see a picture of the World Trade Center when Building 7 structural troubles start it's mid-morning, the North Tower is experiencing its own structural failure, and it is projecting structural steel into Building 7. Here's the World Trade Center mid-afternoon, where the Twin Towers used to stand. Building 7 is still standing there, and the fires are slowly but surely bringing it to an end. Now let's look at Building 7 in the evening after its demise. Oh, excuse me, the picture of Building 7 after the destruction, and remove the other one, please. Thank you. So this is Building 7 after its destruction. It looks like somebody dumped a trainload of scrap metal there. So once again, let's ponder the story of Building 7. In the evening of 9/11, 7 hours after the Twin Towers destruction, World Trade Center Building 7 spontaneously disintegrated in 7 seconds. 7 years later, experts from the United States government traced this back to office fires ignited by projections of structural steel from the Twin Towers. Now, you may object that since it took only 7 seconds, maybe television missed the movement of Building 7. It's a fair question, but the answer is no. Television was actually there. They did make a record of the disintegration of Building 7, and they showed it, albeit only once or twice. The best clip is arguably what Dan Rather from CBS showed in the evening of 9/11. Before we show this clip, though, I'm going to give a warning to people who may be watching this for the very first time and are only learning about Building 7. I'm going to expose you to a conspiracy that's extremely seductive and addictive. So I highly advise you, I implore you to stop watching this program, rewind from the beginning, and review very carefully everything I've explained so far. Review it several times before you pursue. Consider it as the equivalent of vaccinating yourself in several installments before exposing yourself to the disease and getting sick anyway. This being said, let's move on. Where's Dan Rather? Dan Rather, you're on.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Thank you, Dan Rather. Would you please repeat your last sentence?
It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down. It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down. It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Thank you, Dan Rather. Well, this was quite a mouthful. What he's alluding to is obviously an industrial process, and the only one we can think of is a controlled demolition. So let's find on the web a few videos of controlled demolitions, compare them to the video record of Building 7. Now, at this point, I don't need to explain you what the conspiracies of Building 7 are all about. If you are mentally normal and this is the first time you're exposed to this material, there's a voice inside your chest or your guts or your throat that is screaming to you that Building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition. And there's nothing you can do to shush that voice. You have been seduced against your will by the conspiracism of Building 7. And this is the danger that television and other sources of information have left people worldwide vulnerable to. Building 7 is the toughest spot to refute in the whole realm of conspiracism. It is the core of conspiracism, where people find ammunition for more conspiracies. It is a safe haven where conspiracists take refuge when they've lost an argument, if you can talk your crazy anti-vax cousin into the possibility of vaccinating her children against COVID-19, 10 minutes later, she'll reason that since Building 7 was a hoax, COVID-19 must be a hoax too. That's crippled conspiracist epistemology for you. Anyway, what's happening here, if we follow the experts, is that different mechanisms can yield the same results. And there's an analogy for that in biology. United States biologists know very well that random evolution can produce results that cannot be distinguished from intelligent design. Well, maybe that's what happened with Building 7. An office fire is a random process that goes from one source of fuel to the other. And once in a very high number of times, it will look like intelligent design while not being intelligent design. By contrast, of course, in a controlled demolition, a team of experts goes through a lot of work and headaches and money spending before getting the building down as if the earth had given way underneath it. Well, let's listen to the experts. Behold, Dr. Sander, a lead engineer at the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was a pillar of the investigation.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
Let's take notes.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
The fuel oil fires.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
There you have it. Let's set our problem. We've got a video record that looks like a controlled demolition. Dr. Sander telling us it's an office fire, and your guts agreed with the video record. Well, let's work on that. Let's assume that Dr. Sander is right. Well, that's always nice, but then your guts are wrong. On the other hand, if Building 7 was destroyed by controlled demolition, as your guts are screaming, it's nice to have your guts right, but then Dr. Sander is wrong. Now, either way, what is wrong is that you are being misled, and not on a small scale. But the real problem is that television could have handled this problem a long time ago, and they've never done it.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires.
Now, there are people who have no trouble with this like you are having, the conspiracists. You know, the conspiracist mind is such that the conspiracist has great difficulty thinking that he may feel something wrong. They have a tendency to trust their intuition, their guts. Now, experts being wrong, it happens all the time. So there's a solution of the problem in the conspiracist's mind. And again, television could have avoided a lot of transitions from otherwise healthy people into conspiracists. In the meantime, we'll have to make a decision as to which way we go, office fires or controlled demolition. Well, we'll go with the reasonable hypothesis of office fires, but first, let's explore the controlled demolition and find out where the conspiracies will lead us. Assuming there's a controlled demolition behind Building 7, it's a very peculiar controlled demolition because nobody knew what should have been known. Well, the building would be lost, the inside would be lost, there'd be an earthquake-type motion around the area, there would be a horrible noise like an artillery field, toxic and hot powder loaded with stones would be ejected all around the place, and heavy debris too. You think that the people who worked in Building 7 would have liked to know, the people who owned Building 7, the neighbors whose windows may be shattered, and possibly a few public servants in New York City. They didn't know. What that tells us is that whoever demolished Building 7 are very dangerous criminals. And this raises questions. Now, let's go over a quick tangent about this, because since we are talking of a crime beyond what Godfather, Don Corleone, movies, and novels have been talking about, this raises a flurry of questions of a varied number of types. There are so many questions that we'll have to answer only a few of them. And the way to prioritize them is by their answers. Some questions regarding Building 7 yield complicated answers, bad questions. Some questions yield dead-ended answers, bad questions. Some questions yield benign answers, bad questions. If by the time you finish formulating a question over Building 7, you are not flooded with questions more frightening than the one you're formulating a bad question. Forget it, seek another question. Seek questions, not answers. And fortunately for the world, conspiracists are expert at asking the wrong Building 7 questions. Let's close our tangent, and where were we? Oh yes, the demolitionists of Building 7 are dangerous criminals, and that raises questions. Well, I'll ask the questions. How did they get away with it? Sub-question. How did they know they'd get away with it? Sub-question. How did they know they'd get away with it when they accepted the project, months or maybe a year or two before the controlled demolition? Well, who would have been afraid of? Who could have denounced them? Well, we just heard one of them, Dr. Sander. If there was a controlled demolition, then the experts are wrong. But wait a minute. Dr. Sander doesn't look like an idiot. He had about 200 collaborators. They have knowledge, they have experience, they have time, they have access to all sorts of data. Is it possible that there was a controlled demolition and they didn't understand that? No, that doesn't make sense. They necessarily knew that they were covering up the criminal demolitionists. So, before we qualify Dr. Sander's work, let's remember that he's not the only one. The first people who covered up the controlled demolition, if there was one, are the cops and the firefighters and the responders who were in the hundreds at the World Trade Center when Building 7 was putatively demolished. Those people know about arson. They know about explosions. And some of them are experts in those areas. In other words, they are the first ones who started the cover-up. And like Dr. Sander and his accomplices, they are dangerous criminals. Well, this raises questions. Did the demolitionists of Building 7 know that the cops, the firefighters, and Dr. Sander would cover them up a long time before the controlled demolition? Well, obviously, yes. Now, how did Dr. Sander, the cops, and the firefighters get away with it? How did they know that the right thing to do was to not report the controlled demolition that had just happened? Who would have criticized them for that? Well, there it goes, television, and also the New York Times, presumably. Just like the experts, journalists are nosy enough to find the controlled demolition that the conspiracists can find. In other words, they could, but did not report the controlled demolition. They protected the criminal demolitionists and the criminal experts. And while we are at it, there are many engineers living in New York City. Some of them must have visited the World Trade Center, watched the videos, and noticed the controlled demolition of Building 7. They also are part of the censorship of whatever happened there. In other words, technical institutions and the mass media, at least in the local New York area, are criminal. Well, this raises questions. Did the demolitionists of Building 7 know a long time before the controlled demolition that television and local engineering experts would not raise any fuss over the controlled demolition? And then, of course, how did the media and technical organizations get away with it? Who would have denounced them? Well, the only people who could have exposed the media would be witnesses. And let's remember that this happened in New York City. You'd think the New Yorkers would have raised the alarm. In 2001, at the time of 9/11, the internet was up and running. Why wouldn't they notice something as big as the controlled demolition of a skyscraper? Would they be distracted by something, and what would that be? Well, here we are postulating that something happened at the time of Building 7 destruction, or maybe a little before, that made New Yorkers oblivious to the controlled demolition of the skyscrapers. And we're talking of people who spend all their lives in skyscrapers, people who sleep in skyscrapers, people who work in skyscrapers, people who do everything in skyscrapers. Wouldn't they be scared to death of witnessing the controlled demolition of a skyscraper? So now we are postulating that something very big happened in New York City that distracted the New Yorkers from Building 7's controlled demolition. And who knew about this momentous event a long time before it happened? The demolitionist of Building 7. Imagine that. Well, let's look for that event. What were the New Yorkers thinking of in the evening of 9/11? Well, there's only one answer to this question. They were thinking of what had happened the same day, the destruction of the Twin Towers by Osama bin Laden. That was a surprise of the century. It was televised and re-televised the whole day long. Now, the destruction took place with a few thousand people inside. It was quick, it was sudden, it was complete, it was a disintegration, and frankly, we can excuse the New Yorkers for not paying attention to Building 7's controlled demolition. They were riveted to their television sets and obsessed with these very sinister videos. Now, is this what the demolitionists of Building 7 were aware of? Did they know that this would happen, and that's why they knew they could get away with planning and carrying out their controlled demolition? Well, obviously, yes. But wait. The Twin Towers destruction was unexpected. Hold on. Let's recapitulate. Assuming your guts are right and Building 7 was destroyed by controlled demolition, then A, the demolitionists are criminal. Checked. The experts, the cops, firefighters, Dr. Sunder are criminals. Checked. Television and institutions of engineers are criminal. Fine. But now we are putting the Twin Towers destruction as an important event that was essential to the success of Building 7's destruction. Now, of course, it was spectacularly morbid. It took place on the same day and at the same place as Building 7, so it was a perfect cover. No argument. The destruction was sudden, rapid, complete, disintegrative, and unexpected, at least officially. Because now that we know that the demolitionists of Building 7 were expecting it, hey, let's change this wording. It was expected. Now, seasoned engineers who would plan the demolition of a skyscraper in a criminal fashion would not be satisfied with expectation of a cover. They'd like a guarantee of a cover. Let's change the wording from expected to guaranteed. So, it seems that the Building 7 demolitionists knew a long time before it happened that Osama bin Laden was planning to destroy the Twin Towers. But wait, Osama bin Laden was very lucky. Lots of things could go wrong in his plans. How could the demolitionists of Building 7 be satisfied with the plan of madman hidden in a cave in Afghanistan and his henchmen trying to get past immigration and into flight schools, etc., etc.? It's highly doubtful that seasoned engineers would fall for that. In other words, this means that the destruction of the Twin Towers was not due to Osama bin Laden's airplanes, but to something else. Now, what may that be? What kind of process would provoke a sudden, rapid, complete, disintegrative destruction of the Twin Towers that would be a slam dunk and satisfy the demolitionists? There's only one answer to this question, and that's a controlled demolition. Now, where we are getting is that if we follow your guts, we are going to find that if Building 7 was demolished, then so were the Twin Towers. It raises a hell of questions, and we're going to focus on just one or two. Let's assume this is so. Well, what scholars, what analysts, what panelists can you trust on 9/11? A, those who deny the controlled demolition, or B, those who affirm the controlled demolition, knowing that those are the conspiracists? Well, the answer is obvious. The only people you can trust about anything on 9/11 are conspiracists. Imagine that. Now let's talk of another obfuscation. Anyone. Hey, the moon landing. Whom can you trust on the proposition that landing on the moon is a hoax, true or false? How can you trust people who are too dumb, too ignorant, too conceited to affirm the Twin Towers controlled demolition in plain sight? You can't. So the only people you can trust on any grand obfuscation are the conspiracists. If you go that route, like it or not, you will become a conspiracist. And people will call you such, and they will be right. Now, are you sure that's what you want? Just because you want to follow your guts over the experts? For that matter, you don't know if your intuition is right. And you don't even know if the experts are wrong. You just suppose, you assume. Maybe it's time for a return to reason. Let's do just that. And let's go inside the alternative hypothesis that Building 7 was destroyed by office fires. We accept that your guts are uncomfortable. The experts' findings are counterintuitive, but the experts are just that, they are experts. And they must have had good reason to reject the controlled demolition that is suggested in the videos of Building 7. So for the time being, we are just going to be humble, accept that Dr. Sander and his colleagues know what they are doing. And if someday we can prove that they are wrong, we'll change our mind. That's quite okay. So let's take a deep breath and summarize the story of Building 7 in its final version. In the evening of 9/11 in New York City, 7 hours after the Twin Towers destruction, Building 7 spontaneously disintegrated in 7 seconds. 7 years later, experts from the United States government trace this back to office fires ignited by projections of structural steel from the Twin Towers. And just for your guts, if you deviate from this narrative, people will call you a conspiracist and they will be right, unless you can prove to their satisfaction that the experts are wrong. And here I'll emphasize their satisfaction, even assuming your guts convince you to capitulate and accept the controlled demolition of Building 7. As long as you cannot demonstrate it to other people, you'll be called names, and rightly so. Now, I'm going to invite most of you to go on an emotion break. This has been very difficult to swallow, and the next segment is designed for a special class of people, and you'll know quickly if you're one of them or not. Let's move on. The sociologists have no name for you, and I take the liberty of calling you shepherds for a reason that will come obvious later. Shepherds live in the here and now. I don't mean the mushy stuff you learn in New Age group, but it's something you do without thinking of it, something you've done since you were born. Meaning the past is just that. It's a collection of experiences, the successes you've had with people and also the failures. You calculate and recalculate lessons thereof with no emotional bias. The past is moving away and is constantly enriched from the present. Is this what you do without thinking about it? Were you born that way? If this does not resonate with you, go take a break. Get yourself a glass of water, cup of coffee, go walk around the neighborhood, whatever relaxes you, and come back in 20 minutes. Let's move on. What is the past good for? For the future. The future is what the past is built on. And the future is just that. It's a collection of possibilities. Moving closer, some of people that are appearing in your life are opportunities. There are so many of them, you cannot grab all of them. You'll plan on catching some for the purpose of exploiting them. Some people are problems. You'll try to stay away from them. And if you cannot, you'll plan on limiting the damage. And there also, it's all a matter of analysis and calculations. based on the past. Your past experience is what you use to figure how you handle what's coming with no emotional bias. The future is continually truncated, and what is it used for? For the present. The present is where the future meets the past. This is where your action takes place. That's where you exploit the people opportunities you have grabbed. And that's where you limit the damage of the people risks that have materialized. And on the side, you also take note the opportunities you missed, the risks that you avoided, and you keep enriching your past with what is just happening in the present. You keep scanning the future, opportunities and risks keep coming, and you are always in the business of calculating possibilities. This is what makes life excitement with the people. This is what it's like to live in the here and now. So once again, most of you will not resonate with this. If that's your case, just go take a break, because what follows will be difficult to understand, and you may even get the bad ideas. Let's move on. Shepherds. Shepherds are really people person. Your life is about handling people. Ideally, you'd like to just use plain good authority. Hey, give me your car. I'm going to shoot you if you don't give me your car. I shot you in the arm, next I'll shoot you in the head. Give me your car. Well, you may get a car that way, but it doesn't work. It has a tendency to backfire terribly. The only authority you can use is soft authority. And you know how to do that. The English language has all sorts of words for that. And of course, you do it by instilling emotions in people. Some people are sensitive to fear, others to anger, to joy, to sadness. And you have learned through your past experience how to tailor the amount of, or the cocktail of emotion you inject into somebody based on the situation. And you learn from your successes and mistakes. It's really similar to what people do when they train animals, the software. It's complicated, it has risks, the results are limited, but that's all you have. And you've asked yourself many times whether there would be a better way. Guess what? We are getting there. Let's just recall how you drive people through emotions. There are several classes of people. First, there are the green workers. If you are a humble, modest shepherd, you're a man, you have one worker, and that's a woman whom you have seduced. What you do with your worker is train the worker to do what you want, exploit the worker, and nurture the worker. In your case, you'll keep the woman loving and trusting you, so she keeps working for you. Unfortunately, the world is full of red people, the dangers. In the case of this woman, the dangers would be the people outside your circle of acquaintances. Church elders are dangerous. Psychologists are the worst, or social workers. You'll want to avoid those people, stay away from them. And when they are involved, all you can do is limit the damage. And at times, the right thing to do is to just get out of a situation that has become toxic. Fortunately for you, there are also green protector people. Those people will be, in our case, in our example, the old acquaintances and the family of the woman. Like Monsieur Tartuffe in the French literature classic, you have trained those green protectors to see everything and understand nothing. So when your woman will complain to them, they will tell her that she should be nicer to you and work harder to please you. And the large majority of people are yellow zeros. They don't have any relationship with you. They just don't matter. Well, until they do. You'll still keep an eye over them, because you never know when one of the yellow zeros will become a green protector, a red danger, or a green worker. Now, all those people fall in a category of the folks that are manipulated through emotions. There's a name for that. And it should have come from the sociologists, but it comes, guess what? From the conspiracists. Those people are called sheeple. And as a shepherd, you are not really a people person. You are a sheeple person. Let's tweak our title accordingly. Now, the sheeple, the shepherds, in opposition to the sheeple, are not driven by emotion. You will certainly meet them, and it's good for you to know them. Occasionally, you may collaborate with them, and you'll also have to watch your back because you never know when one of them will play a trick on you. Speaking of which, inter-shepherd collaboration takes many forms. It can be very quick and simple. Give me a little bit of help and I'll owe you. Or scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Or at times, shepherds will decide to merge their flocks of sheeple and exploit them together. Now, change is part of the game. When you communicate, you have to use the shepherd's double speak so that the sheeple get the emotional content of what you're saying while the shepherds get the facts. And of course, you have to remember the curse of Damocles. Damocles, you may remember what that was, that Greek ruler who whose reign could end at any time from any detractor. A shepherd will break his agreement with you as soon as he thinks it's good for him. Now, this collaboration within shepherd is is almost essential inside established organizations like a government or a corporation, and it is highly profitable, but it's dangerous, it requires constant attention, and it is fragile. What does it have to do with building 7? Well, everything. You see, you understood before everybody that building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition, and you understood very quickly that the Twin Towers controlled demolition was the cover of building 7. That's what you get from not being overwhelmed by emotions like those stupid sheeple. And of course, the cover of the Twin Towers controlled demolition was Osama bin Laden's aerial ballet, whatever that might have been, but we don't care for that. What we are going to get into is the essence of 9/11 as a false flag, like Hitler's Reichstag fire. It was meant to generate toxic emotion in high quantities against the sheeple in New York, in the United States, and all over the West, and goad them into activities that they otherwise would refuse, like unending wars, poverty, constant insecurity, and it succeeded. Now, 9/11, with its enormous impact and its high visibility, should have caught the attention of a large number of watchdogs that would have screamed the alarm that 9/11 was a controlled demolition. Well, it did not happen. Let's see, who might have raised the alarm? How about internal watchdogs inside government agencies from New York City to Washington, D.C.? How about whistleblowers? How about one of the 600 to 700 United States congressmen and women? Judges have been brought by conspiracies to do something. They've done nothing. State governments have done nothing or almost nothing. Local governments, foreign governments, rogue and enemy governments have done nothing or extremely little in the way of denouncing 9/11 as a false flag. The mass media, we went through that. Corporations who lost their people in the Twin Towers have done nothing. Many engineers identified the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers live on television. They reached out to their professional organizations. Nothing happened. Psychologists noticed on the day of 9/11 that there was something weird with the way anchors on television talked. They seemed to talk spontaneously and read from a script at the same time. Nobody listened to them in their professional organizations. Sociologists, lawyers, religious institutions were still waiting for a priest or a pastor to preach that since the Twin Towers were destroyed by a controlled demolition, it was very unchristian to start the war in Afghanistan and that Jesus would not have that. It's not happened. Labor unions don't like war, they don't like poverty, they've done nothing. Human rights defenders don't give a damn for the 2,000 people killed in the Twin Towers just because they were at the wrong place and the wrong time. And anti-war people have published all sorts of materials with many reasons against the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, except the one that warmongering, Bush-loving Republicans would have understood even if they were analphabet. If 9/11 was a false flag, the Bush wars made no sense. Fact checkers, skeptics, atheists, the more they look at the myth of Building 7, the more they are convinced it is true. Guerrillas and terrorists, the real ones, also lost an opportunity to make it known to the world that they may do evil stuff, but they would not stoop that low. In other words, it doesn't matter which watchdog, which opinion maker you look at. Everybody who should have exposed 9/11 at the false flag that it was has not done so, oftentimes against their own interests. This is the message of Building 7. So this is really about the censorship of 9/11, which is the topic we are going to go through. The censorship of 9/11 is a remarkable achievement. It encompasses just about all the opinion makers you can think of all around the world. It's been going on for 20 years plus, and it's still going on. It is extremely tight. Nothing goes through it. Well, almost nothing. But whenever a leak takes place, a plumber comes right back and sees it. It's happened a few times. And then it doesn't matter if an opinion maker or watchdog is a socialist or a capitalist, rich or poor, illegal or legal, it just doesn't matter. Everybody and his cousin in the who's who of opinion making agrees that 9/11 was an Osama bin Laden job and not a false flag. Undoubtedly, shepherds must have been acting in a very good team behind all that. And this is something you don't find within ordinary shepherds. A tight-knit, unbreakable organization that managed to permeate a large number of organizations throughout the world. The task was enormous, but the results have been almost perfect. Now, it was used before and continuously improved on false flags other than 9/11, and it's also used on a myriad issues, usually to pit people against each other. Like if you want to know why in the United States, for almost a century, pro-choice and pro-life activists are at each other's throat, well, the same shepherds who pulled the strings of the 9/11 censorship also pull a few strings so that the abortion controversy remains alive and well, so the sheeple get distracted, which they should be. In other words, the 9/11 censorship shows that shepherds can confidently work together without watching their back against each other for long periods of time. And let's dig up two of our watchdogs who are silent here, rogue and enemy governments. We are talking of rogue and enemy shepherds which can work on the 9/11 censorship. Imagine that. Well, those rogue enemy shepherds are really friendly shepherds. They are collaborative shepherds because they censor 9/11 with the Western shepherds. Well, the key is that the rogue and enemy governments are really shepherd governments. These are governments of the shepherds, by the shepherds, for the shepherds. They even almost unmask themselves to their sheeple, whom they have subjugated successfully. This is the pyramid of power in Cuba, China, and other places. The shepherds on top, the sheeple at the bottom. And the sheeple know it very well. Now, the shepherds still keep their mask on for the benefit of their Western sympathizers. If you bring the topic of human rights abuses in Cuba to a socialist, the socialist will tell you, well, yeah, but A, people exaggerate the human rights abuses in Cuba, and B, since the rulers are socialists, there must be a reason for what they do. Very good for the Cuban shepherds. They also stay masked to their Western opponents. Talk of Cuban repression to an anti-socialist, you'll get the answer that, well, the Cuban rulers are socialists, they are evil by definition. That's exactly what the rulers of those countries want. Now, I forgot to tell you that they also managed to domesticate some of the sheeple and promote them to sheepdogs. The sheepdogs are a special class of sheeple who are capable of understanding the shepherds and the ordinary sheeple, and they can be used to convey orders from the shepherds to the sheeple. Now, this model is scalable. It works in a community of a few thousand people. It worked in the Soviet Union, and there's no reason why it would not work globally. Hey, let's get some numbers. We've got a global population of 8 billion people. Out of those, we have about 500 million shepherds. Out of those sheeple, we can promote approximately 1 billion sheepdogs, and these are based on experience of sheeple governments. There's a remainder of 6.5 billion sheeple. It means that for every 4 sheeple, there's 1 master. That's workable. And one benefit of a global shepherd government is that for the first time, the shepherds will be able to unmask completely. There will be no Western sheeple to save face to. In other words, the sheeple can be repressed full blast, and with a bit of luck, they'll be fully domesticated. Isn't this worth exploring? Let's do it. Guess what? There is a global shepherdizing project. Over the last few decades, transportation and communication have made so much progress that it is possible to imagine a global shepherdized government. And they've been working on it for a few decades. You may not have heard of it because it's been a very discreet job. You'll be pleased to know that the United States is a prime objective, probably the prime objective these days, because of course the nation is very powerful and very influential. Therefore, once it has been shepherdized, it will be a model for the rest of the West. Now, it also happens that it's easy to isolate the United States. Not only is it easy to deploy the army all around the border in a few days, but there's so much electronic equipment and electronic competencies in this country that it can be made such that the sheeple will not be able to let the outside world know what's going on here. And finally, the United States sheeple are ripe. Over the last few decades, they've been getting dumber and dumber. I mean, they can't even find that Trump is unmasking his mask. Obama and Bush wouldn't have gotten away with it. They don't even notice that shepherds are trying to join Trump in massive numbers, to the point that the Trumpist sheeple are very well under control. However, that can change. In a generation, the sheeple may become smarter, and it will be extremely difficult to shepherdize the United States. In other words, there is a window of opportunity for you to join the United States shepherdizing project. The time is now. You'll be driving the sheeple, you'll be working in some opinion maker that will drive the sheeple into hysteria, into neurosis, into chaos. The sheeple don't know anything about basic psychology. You'll keep them that way. They don't know anything about spirituality and theology. You'll keep them that way. They don't know anything about sociology. You'll keep them ignorant. It really is the same as the process of the 9/11 censorship, an extension of it by the same organizations, the same numerous and very variegated organizations. Take your pick. And the idea, of course, is to distract the sheeple from the impending shepherdization of the United States. Well, let's finish with your action items. This is a very opportune time for you. You have to grab it, though. Review what I've been telling you. Don't take my word for granted. If you don't care for 9/11, review the censorship of another conspiracy. They're all the same. And then join any of the censors. One you like. Apply in shepherd double speak. You can also promise that you will keep people away from conspiracy theories. And again, you know that your job when you apply for a job there is to have your application not be discarded summarily, so that it will go to the Bureau of Weird Applications, where with a bit of luck, a shepherd will find it, recognize your doublespeak, and you are hired. Finally, I'm going to use Karl Marx's words. Shepherds of the word, unite. You have nothing to lose but your masks. And this being said, I'm going to send you shepherds on your merry way, and you'll excuse me because I've got a few sheeple to put to sleep. And now I'm getting back to our regular audience. I hope that you had a break where you could work on your emotions, have a one-on-one talk with your guts maybe. What we are learning today is that Building 7 conspiracies are very difficult to crack. And at this point, it's advisable for you to flee from Building 7. Don't provoke the conspiracists. And if they provoke you, change the subject immediately. Do anything, even the Twin Towers. Now, also avoid subjects connected to Building 7. If the conspiracists bring the Twin Towers, change the subject. Do anything. Same thing if they bring 9/11 or some large conspiracy of terror like London in 2005, or even a major obfuscation like the chemtrails, the Federal Reserve, the vaccines, whatever. Change the subject if you can. Now, it won't always work. If you are really confronted with Building 7, avoid like a plague the controlled demolition. At this point, I would recommend that you ask bad questions to the conspiracists. Conspiracists love to vomit. By this, I mean talk, and ramble endlessly. So what you'll do is distract the audience by asking complicated questions. Drag the audience by asking open-ended questions that will make the conspiracists vomit and vomit and vomit. If you know this, let me tell you, and wait, there's more. And while you're at it, make some of these questions scary, so the audience will be disgusted. That may do it. Now, if you are confronted with the videos of the controlled demolition, the only thing I can think of for you at this point is to invoke independent technical experts. Offer to contact the nearest professional demolitionists and ask them about what they think of Building 7. The conspiracists will tell you he's got a list of architects and engineers who affirm the controlled demolition. Well, tell him that it's fine, but you'd rather ask the local architects or the local engineers. There are too few conspiracy experts, and you don't want to travel 100 miles to find one. So you will have to play defense on Building 7. Do not provoke the conspiracies. You're not ready for that because you just don't have data relevant to Building 7. And besides, conspiracies are very good sophists. You may not want to measure up to them. Where you can go, the offense is on television. As we've said several times, television could have impeded, killed in the bud, the conspiracies of Building 7. All they had to do is make the public aware of Building 7's videos, get Dr. Sander or somebody else in their studio and explain to the public that it may look like a controlled demolition, but it's something very different. So request the documentary.
Oh no, Dan froze.
Oh. I didn't think he was done yet.
Area. The destruction was complete, accidental. It was an accident. Oh, hold on. My internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, if you go back about 30 seconds.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. I'll start the beginning of this slide. Thank you.
Oh. There we go.
We're almost finished. Okay, anyway, let's look for any other value apart from the education against conspiracism in Building 7? Well, Building 7 is arguably the largest catastrophe in the history of civil engineering. We're talking a very tall steel frame skyscraper in an area well known, the World Trade Center. The destruction was complete, and it was a precedent. It never happened before. Second, there's the cause, office fires. Office fires are a known phenomenon in skyscrapers. They are undesirable but inevitable. They cause damage, but they never cause anything close to what happened to Building 7. Finally, there's the resemblance with the controlled demolition that the experts had to rule out. And if it was not enough, there's a coincidence with the Twin Towers destruction. Two completely different events of historic value with much in common. Sudden, complete disintegration of tall steel-framed high-rises due to very different causes. In one case, an office fire, in the other, a vicious attack of terrorists. So it looks like there's plenty of juicy data for a good documentary. And Dr. Sander, or local university professor, would be the star of the show, saying that the controlled demolition doesn't fit all the evidence. It took a long time to find the cause, but it was simply an office fire. Unfortunately, people can't understand it, and therefore the conspiracists are having a field day. So it looks like there's a lot of value in it. And the take-home message would be that Osama bin Laden is even more evil than we thought. He destroys 3 skyscrapers with 2 airplanes. Your guts are to be mistrusted. Instead, you should trust television to bring experts to you. Conspiracism is evil. Your guts are not trustworthy, and you should watch more television. Well, it looks like it's hard to find a reason not to develop this kind of documentary. Anyway, let's finish with your action items. Number 1, once and for all, the cause of the destruction of Building 7 is office fires, the video record and your guts notwithstanding. The experts know what they are doing. We have no reason to believe that they are wrong, and the conspiracies are just full of egotism. 2, you cannot attack the conspiracists on Building 7, but you can defend against them. Try to change the subject one way or another and stay away from technical arguments. You lose them. 3, go and harass television to produce the Building 7 documentary that they never produced, and they should have produced a long time ago. While you're at it, you can contact the print media too, and possibly an organization of local mechanical or civil engineers, or even of engineers who are experts in explosions, like mining engineers, aerospace engineers, military engineers, majors and colonels. Senior military officers know about explosives and building destruction. If you want to do some deep work, I would advise that you explore further the documentary that should have been made but was not made. The theme is, of course, to challenge the technical experts in a friendly way with difficult questions. The experts will defend their work. It will have to be kept simple enough for the viewers. And the theme will be that the experts are the unrecognized heroes of 9/11. The public cannot understand them, and the conspiracists call them names starting with traitors and criminals. I'll offer that it's going to be difficult to find tough questions, so you may want to consider seeking an expert in Building 7 questions to follow with that. And this being said, I will release the mic to everybody else and stop sharing the screen.
Wow. You put a lot of effort into that.
There.
Thank you.
That was great. Can you share those slides? That was fantastic.
That was brilliant, Dan.
No, thank you. Yes, I can share them, yes.
Did you create that just for this meeting?
No, it's an extension of a slideshow I started.
Oh,
in 2020, I think it was 2019, 2020.
wonderful.
And it's still ongoing. There's a lot of details to clear.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very excited to share this on our Rumble channel. All right. Thank you. Well, let's start with questions. 9/11 revisionists. Now let's keep the questions to under 2 minutes and remember to be respectful and no interruptions. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, fine. Can you hear me
Yes.
correctly? Okay, I've got a question. I basically want to play a video and basically comes into the questions with regards to building 7. It's 1 minute and 27 seconds. And if I could possibly be allowed to share my screen so that you can see the video with the questions raised pertaining to building 7. Can I quickly share my screen?
Yep, but remember we have to keep this under 2 minutes.
It's 1 minute, 27 seconds.
All right.
Okay, so let me quickly do that. Let me see if I've got the right question. Share. Take that down. Let's see. Can you see that?
What I see is a YouTube with a bunch of thumbnails. So there's no video being shared right now. I think you're at the end of the video and need.
The title is Building 7 was a hoax, but it's not playing.
Right. And the scroll bar is all the way at the end. Maybe.
So what's the issue?
Jimmy Dore. But it's not playing.
Can you
Okay, the thing is,
scroll back to the beginning?
I'm going to try and do that. Let's see if I can take the stuff out of the way. Can you see my screen now with David Chandler, Richard Gage, and Gail?
No. Stop.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Stop share and start again. See if that does it.
I just think you
okay,
shared the
fine.
wrong screen. Just pick the other screen. Try it again.
The other screen. Let's see. Share. That one over there. No,
And don't
not
forget to
that
share
one.
sound.
Share and start.
Look, I'm not too technically inclined like you are, Gene. I'm not really into.
All good.
Give me 2 seconds. Let me quickly see where is the screen that I want to share. No, is that the one? No.
Yeah, could we just go to a different question, come back to Norman?
Yeah, there's some.
Okay, fine. Let me try and figure this out real quick. But oh, there it is. There it is.
Okay, but you have to stop.
Share. Okay, I'll find it. So you can see a whole bunch of little bits over here. So I'm gonna like expand that.
Nothing.
Can you see that?
Still the same.
So David Chandler on the left, Richard Gage on the right, and Gail at the bottom. Can you see that?
Stop share and start share again. You have to stop share to get off this page and then start share again with what you want to share.
Where the hell do I stop share? That's the
So
problem.
I'll throw one to Dan real quick. You do Toastmasters, right? Because it showed, and I appreciate that.
I've never done Toastmasters.
Oh, no? All right. I thought I heard that you did. Well,
You
The
should.
different vocal inflections, telling the stories from different people. That was brilliant. I love it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, can I quickly try this whole thing again?
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's see. Can you see
There we go.
this thing with David Chandler on the left, Richard Gage on the right, and Gale at the bottom? Can you see that?
It's opening. It's spinning. You see your cursor spinning. It's not opening. Titled Seismologist Part 2. Is that what you clicked on?
No, you'll see at the bottom there's Roadrunner question measuring things, building, falling. David Chandler on the left, Gage at the top right, and Gale in the middle.
It's really too small to make out.
Well, on my full
Norman, can you hear me? I'll see if I
Yeah.
can help. When you click share screen, when you open a new window, that's not going to get shared. So you'll have to each time share the thing that's opened. Because right now you have the
Okay, so
folder
I've
when you
got to
click
go
the
to
video.
that and then share. So,
Yeah, otherwise you
Can
have
you
to
see it
share.
now?
Yeah, now you can see it.
There
Yeah.
it is.
All right.
okay, cool. So let's see if you guys can hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
No, not yet.
So you can hear that.
No.
No, you had to share sound too, unfortunately.
Now, where do I do share
For the-
sound?
You did? There was a checkbox when you were sharing it. You had to have checked.
Yeah.
For your audio's on, your audio on your laptop or power.
Yeah, you'll have to do it again. When you click share, there's a options tab. So just unshare, share again, and then look at the options tab.
Okay. Share.
Technically.
Okay. There's the share sound. Okay, cool. Okay, share. Okay, so let's do a test.
Well, there were, when it fell.
So you could hear that.
Yes, we're good.
Okay, hallelujah. Sorry, guys, that I'm technically problematic. I'm from Africa, so we're not too bright. So excuse that. So here's the question or whatever that I asked in 2023 with a little bit of extra. So Daniel, Noel, if you can give me some feedback on what is being presented, I'll appreciate it.
Question. Measuring things. The building falling, could it be measured on the Richter scale?
Well, there were, when it fell, it created seismic waves that were picked up. I don't remember the names of the places. I never looked into that, but Ted Walter, who I was doing this paper with, has done some, and then there's some other guys who have looked at the seismic signals that they picked up from 9/11.
Yeah.
The second part of that question was, what seismic readings could we expect? Do you have
I'm not a
any idea?
seismologist, so let's go on.
WTC2 just went away at the top, and then WTC1, and then you have these various quarry blasts all day. And then see down here at the bottom, that was an earthquake in the Fox Islands, which is up part of the Aleutian Islands. But look at the thing just before then. That was Building 7 going away. You can't even see it on the chart. It made a 0.6 equivalency on the Richter scale, which is like a jackhammer. And it was 6 times the mass of the King Dome. No wave traveled through the earth. It was only surface waves. That doesn't happen in building demolitions. Yeah, you always have an S wave and a P wave at building demolitions.
So yeah, would like your feedback on that. Thanks.
Well, my feedback is that Building 7 was destroyed by office fires. That's the conclusion of my slideshow. I expect you to not believe that Building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition.
The issue with Building 7, it was a 230,000 ton building. that basically fell down to the ground and left a 0.6 on the seismic chart with only surface waves and no S or P wave like you would expect on a normal building demolition. If you basically
okay, well, it was not a
that
building
to
demolition was the problem.
No, but it wasn't a controlled demolition because actually,
I
if you
agree.
listen
It was
to
not a controlled demolition. I agree. That's what I've been
wonderful.
saying all along.
Okay, so the other aspect is the other thing that I've noticed through the years is that the videos that are shown, it never shows the fact that the building fell silently without any measurable or sounds of explosions going off like you would see in, let's say, the Ocean Tower. That was a 39 floor building that was prepared for a month and a half prior
What's the problem?
the demolition. So the main aspect is just because it looks like a controlled demolition doesn't necessarily mean that it is a controlled demolition.
Well, that's what I've been saying all along. What is the problem?
No, the aspect that I have is there are people that are trying to sell you on the point that it was a controlled demolition using explosives and all of that, but there was no initial blast sounds. There was no blast sounds whilst the building was going down. And then also the seismic reading didn't have any S waves or P waves whatsoever. And if you relate that to the Kingdom, that was a 20-story building that registered at 2.3, and never mind that, in 2023, you had a Taylor Swift concert with people jumping up and down, and that concert registered at 2.3. So I would love anybody that's trying to push controlled demolition using conventional methods, thermal or kinetic, stating that a 230,000 ton building dropped down to the ground and only left 0.6 when the Kingdom left at 2.3. It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds ridiculous. What is your problem?
No, maybe look into seismic readings, because you've got people stating that they are experts on the demolition of Building 7 or whatever, and when you ask them about the seismic readings, their first go-to is, sorry, but I'm not a bloody seismologist.
That nothing. Well, what's your problem if Building 7 was destroyed by office fires? What problem do you have with that?
It wasn't destroyed by office fires, and it wasn't
disagree with the experts,
and it wasn't destroyed by controlled demolition.
Hold on, you disagree with the experts, with Dr. Sander?
The seismic readings of the building going down or whatever does not align with a conventional controlled demolition using any kinetic or thermal mechanism whatsoever. A 230,000 ton building hitting the ground won't leave a 0.6 when people at a concert jumping up and down creates a 2.3 magnitude seismic reading.
Yeah,
Building 7 was a 0.6.
You're backing off the wrong tree. We are not saying that Building 7 was destroyed by office fires, but if you have a problem with office fires, don't take it with us. Take it with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They are the ones who made the error. They are the ones who said it was destroyed by office fires. I didn't. Tell them. They've published the official report on the
Okay, quick question. Have you ever read the QTAM whistleblower case of Dr. Judy Wood that took on NIST in 2007, that went to the US Supreme Court, actually completely and utterly demolishing the NIST narrative? And they confirmed to her in court transcripts that they never did the research and the investigations pertaining to what they were apparently stating that happened. The actual fact is a 230,000-ton building slamming down to the ground would make a significant seismic reading with S and P waves, which was not there. It was surface wave. It's like the weight was removed off the bedrock.
So your question.
All I can say is that you're backing of the wrong tree. Don't complain to us about the National Institute of Standards and Technology investigation being wrong. Complain to them. There was an action in court, but it doesn't prevent you from writing a letter to Washington telling them that you think they are wrong, explaining why. Let them correct their mistake.
My question to you is, have you ever read Dr. Wood's 2007 QTAM whistleblower case, where she basically rips apart the NIST studies on all the buildings? Never mind that. They only investigated the towers and building 7. And there are anomalies with buildings 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Bankers Trust.
Okay.
Can you tell me what the anomalies are with the 9/11 orphans, buildings 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Bankers Trust? Have you ever investigated that? Yes or no?
Let him answer it. Has he read it? Did you read it? Whoops. I'm sorry. You got muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a yes and no question, and my answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, so you are talking about a subject that you know nothing about. So you have no idea.
You are talking about a subject I don't understand.
So you have no idea. You have no idea what the anomalies are with buildings 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Bankers Trust. Correct?
No, there are many things I have no idea of. But I know that building 7 resembles a controlled demolition, and I know that the experts determined it was the result of office fires. I know that. I know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Gene, stop muting me.
You have taken on well more than 2 minutes. And we have I have a question.
In my defense, I'm not muting anybody. I don't have admin controls.
I am doing it because he is talking over our guests, and that's not allowed. Okay. He asks a question, but then he expounds endlessly after the question, and the question gets lost. So anyway, I wanted to get back because I have my hand raised, and I wanted to get back to an order. And I did raise my hand next, which relates to Norman's question. Since Richard Gage is on here, he did interview, I forgot his first name, Rousseau, a seismic expert. Richard? Can you chime in? I forget his first name. Do you remember the interview with Rousseau?
I'm posting it.
Yeah, that's Andre.
Andre Rousseau, right.
His studies right there. Sorry. His studies in the chat right now.
Excellent.
I sent the video of Andre and the seismic signals in the chat.
Okay.
But this is off the topic because Dan said there are problems with NIST because fire wasn't the cause. We all agree that fire wasn't the cause. So the problem's not with us. The problem's with NIST, if I may. Sorry.
Yeah. So there were seismic readings, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. Clearly, there were seismic readings. And the seismic readings show that 0.6 Richter signal was 10 seconds before the collapse, the overall collapse of the building. And NIST had a fancy explanation suggesting that, that must have been from the interior of the building falling first, 10 seconds before the exterior, without any deformation, by the way, of the exterior structural steel perimeters frame. So that makes no sense, especially when we have more than half a dozen witnesses hearing explosions, one very clearly seeing a flash of light well before the tower came down. So, of course, none of that is explained by the directed energy weapons theory.
Richard, if I may, I'm sorry that I'm interjecting here, but can I ask you a question? You are now stating that.
Hold on a second. Stu, do you want to turn this into a debate about this
No,
subject?
it's not a debate, it's a discussion.
Or hold on, I'm not done. Or do you want to go back to Q&A for Dan?
Yeah, let's go back to the Q&A.
Okay.
Next raised was Matthew. Go ahead, Matthew, and remember under 2 minutes and no interruption for after you ask your question.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Let me turn the video on. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will share my screen. Let me just see it pop it up. And where is this one at? I have like a bunch of windows. I just need to open up the right one. This could be it. Okay, no, this is the wrong one. I need to share the different one. 1 second, sorry about that. Because okay, it's one right here. So I'll go back into this. Okay, yeah, this one here. So I'll share it with sound if I play video. There's a couple things. Yeah, the one thing I want to ask about was the amount of dust. I took a screenshot of the of Noël. Can you see my screen? I took a screenshot. This is the one on the left that you had building 7, and then on the right you had a regular demolition. If you see in the background, can you see that there's a massive amount of dust on the building 7, and there's no dust on top. So one question is about that, and you can see this is a North Tower lathering up. It has a whole bunch of dust. Even before the South Tower, I think the South Tower also fell. Before it fell, there's fuming at the ground. So you can see a whole bunch of dust coming from top down, and this goes on for an hour. And then this is building 7. Building 7 that does this for 7 hours. Oh, actually even more. It goes multiple weeks after. So I want to hide this thingy away from this. Okay. And then so that was that one. Yeah, I did that. And then here is a comparison. I'll open up this one here. Building. Actually, a different one. I'm just gonna open up this. Okay, I don't know why I can't zoom into this. Yeah. Okay. So this was I think yeah, one of the towers, but you can see the amount of dust it literally goes to the atmosphere. This is a normal demolition. And now this is a video that I uploaded years ago. This shows a time lapse of the building 7 turning dust. Literally, you can see a bunch of dust coming out of it. And I'll just play it super fast just so you can see. So my question is basically your thoughts on the amount of dust coming out, and then so here's building 7 right here, just fuming for an average 45 times speed. This is 7 hours, and the amount of dust is super thick. It's opaque, and it goes through and it's always going through one side only. And
looking at our window, we're hovering at about
even the helicopter reporter says they've never seen anything like this in her life.
1,600 feet, 1,500 feet, and I'm telling you, this smoke is probably 5,000 feet into the air. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And again, the smoke is getting much, much thicker. It seems to have rekindled.
Okay, yeah, and then just I'll go to the end. So it keeps going on, the fuming, and then it falls down super quietly. That's another part. And there's no projectiles, because in a regular demolition, you remove all the parts in it. You remove all the furniture, all the windows, anything that can launch out. There's no launching out. It just falls down quietly. There's very, very, very little noise. People heard, yeah, explosion sounds, yeah, but nothing like explosives, which would have deafened many people and been picked up by cameras, seismic signals. But and then, anyways, it fell down. And then I want to go to the end, and then just to show you, this was September 12th or 13th. Building 7 is still fuming. You can see it's still like it's weird dust going on. People are walking in it. They're still spraying water. It's not that hot in there. There's firefighter dogs and everything. Then they're spraying water on it, and it just wouldn't stop, and it keeps going on. This is another one. I think 10 days, and I believe it goes on for months, possibly years. It's just still fuming, and then it's still going on. So again, I've never seen any demolition or fire collapse that had fuming for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months after. So, and it keeps going on. This is December 18th to 19th. It's still going. So like, what in the world's going on here? And you can also see some weird toasted cars bent around there. So, and the question, and it's still going on. They're fuming there, or they're throwing on there, and yeah. So, basically, the amount of dust. That's the main thing. And yeah, I'll just stop sharing my screen. And if you can,
what's your question?
what's your thoughts on the amount of dust? It's and also going on for weeks and weeks and possibly months, relative to any demolition or building fire. And just to see what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, this is not relevant to the topic we discussed, I exposed today, but in more advanced classes of 9/11, I go into the controlled demolition. I would say that what you're talking about is a detail. You have to remember that what matters about 9/11 is not the exact minutiae of the controlled demolition. It's not even the cover-up by cops, firefighters, and Dr. Sander. It's the censorship by human rights organizations, by the American Civil Liberties Union, by Greenpeace, by the anti-war people, by the Ku Klux Klan. This is the real problem of 9/11. And I propose that people who want to fix and save the world can keep the minutiae aside. Once it's known that 9/11 is a false flag, and that the Twin Towers were destroyed by controlled demolition. How exactly it was done is interesting, it's important, but it's not essential. Essential is that, as I hated a double speak for a good 10 minutes in this slideshow, there are psychopaths at work who are taking advantage of 9/11 and similar events to grab authority over mentally normal people. And should they succeed, the result would be catastrophic. But I'm starting to talk at the advanced 9/11 class level, so I'll stop it here.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your thoughts.
All right, Wayne, you're next.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing I want to say is, thanks, Dan, for this. I really have appreciated your talking about the censorship, worldwide global censorship caused by all the shepherds. And appreciate your presentation here. I will respond to two of the two previous comments. First of all, all controlled demolitions are not the same. There are many demolitions, especially of concrete buildings, in which they use the concrete itself to actually destroy the building by boom, 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 and you end up with at the bottom it all crashing at once. That'll create a larger seismic event. Steel frame building, and if you looked at my presentation of the Boston 9/11, I think in the end of October, November last year, I talked about how you can actually see the side of the building being blown out and landing on Fitterman Hall. It's a steel frame structures, a lot less massive, so the seismic signature should be much less. Now, turning to Matthew's dust comment, please note that the dust is full of remnants of tiny iron spheres and some unreacted nanothermite. The reaction of that creates aluminum oxide smoke, which is very dominant in the smoke that you're seeing, and it actually appears to be what was the white stuff that people thought was concrete that was over the west side of Manhattan after the event. Enormous covering of a white blanket of very, very fine stuff. And I think that was the white that was settled out aluminum oxide dust, but that would be accounting for your, and it would be still reacting under the collapsed buildings, emitting the smoke that you were pointing to in the post-collapse time period. So those are my comments. But again, Dan, thanks for the presentation and your wisdom about the worldwide global censorship. So thanks. That's all I had. Over.
Was there a question there, Wayne?
No, there was a comment. Just a couple of answers to previous questions, and a thanks to Dan for his talking so much about the global. I find that to be the most remarkable thing about 9/11, and I agree with Dan on that.
Next we have Magnus. Go ahead, Magnus.
Yes, thank you. Great to see you. Nice presentation. The roof line behind you there, it goes straight down exactly at the same time as the building is falling. And I can't account for anything other than a controlled demolition for doing that. It's impossible for the roof line and the building to come down exactly the same time without a controlled demolition like that. And I know that a bomb or something went off on the north side earlier that morning, 9:50 and 9:30. So we know that the building was weakened early that morning, so they tried to bring it down very early and throughout the day. So it's a controlled demolition that went wrong, that they just happened to 5:20. That should have happened when the second tower went down, but it didn't. So they waited to 5:20. That's when the demolition takes place. So they tried throughout the day, in my opinion, to bring down this building. So the roof line there is very important.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of me. I do teach the controlled demolition of Building 7, but in a more advanced version of this class. The way I try to teach 9/11, and you see me argue with one of our friends there, is that I propose that people believe the official theory until they can prove it to be false. And the best way to enter into Building 7 is by just being angry at conspiracists, how they thrive preaching controlled demolition, and why isn't television there countering that message, which is something that people who oppose conspiracism have much difficulty disagreeing with. Somebody in television ought to put the conspiracists in their place and inundate the world with Building 7's videos, and then a local university professor who would say that, well, it looks like a controlled demolition, but it's not a controlled demolition, and only we, the experts, can demonstrate why office fires could do that. And the controlled demolition, as you probably know from personal experience, it takes a very long time and a lot of mental work to come to terms with the controlled demolition of the World Trade Center. It's a major paradigm shift for us. Psychopaths have it easier, as I alluded to in my doublespeak section. They are very egotistic, meaning that they like to cling to their preconceived notions, but because they are not driven by emotion like we are, they'll change their mind very quickly if given compelling reasons. I hope I answered your question, Magnus.
Yeah, and thank you for being here today. Amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next, he didn't raise his hand electronically, but he put it in the chat. Joseph Olson.
Yes. I don't know why my video's not showing. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, I made a presentation on February 20th to Boston 911, and I mentioned one of the articles that I based a lot of my research on, the Palmer Report, which was posted as breathtaking, solving 911 at Veterans Today. This was back on September 1st, 2019. I didn't go through the whole thing. I did mention that they had 45 PowerPoint slides, and this shows the complete sequence of the operation. But the amazing thing is when you look at 6-44 slides, you see a hole that's over 100 feet deep that was burnt into the granite bedrock that was solid when they built the building foundations, and couldn't possibly have been done by directed energy, couldn't have been done by thermite, couldn't have been done by conventional explosives. This was a nuclear event, just like I said in my article. unequivocal 911 nukes. And to keep things brief, I'll go ahead and put this in the comment when it's posted at Rumble. But when you see these holes, there's 3-story tall track hose sitting on the granite bedrock that was the basement of the building, pulling the steel out of that hole. And the reason the hole was hot for 2,500 degrees for 3 months was because that's the nuclear isotope you get from all of the different elements that are in the building that all have multiple radioactive isotopes. And that includes iron, carbon, calcium, silicon. Those are the ingredients in steel and concrete. But then you also have granite, which has additional phosphorus and sodium. And so together you have 150 available isotopes. And that's in my article, Exposing the NIST Jenga Game, which I will also link, which was also published at Veterans Today, because as wonderful as the guys were at the Palmer Report, they were 4 PhD physicists from Europe, and they did not understand building construction, number one, and they did not understand nuclear isotopes, number two. And as far as the NIST report, they stop at the initiation of collapse on both of the Twin Towers and on Building 7. They said, this is what initiated the collapse, and we're not going to discuss it any further. This is what happened. And their deal on Building 7 was that they had a 30-foot beam that heated up enough to jump off a 6-inch haunch and jump, and that caused the whole building to fall down. But if you do the linear coefficient of expansion for a steel beam, it would have been beyond the vaporization of the steel in order to get the expansion required to do that. So the whole NIST report is absolutely 100% false science. In a court of law, I could prove them wrong on every one of their hypotheses.
Joseph, is there a question here?
Yes, let's talk about, why can't we talk about nuclear vaporization? Because that's really what probably happened. Anyhow, other than that,
my answer to that would be that it's not the topic of my talk, but since we are talking nuclear after talking direct energy, I'd say that when I advise 9/11 activists, I tell them to stay away from exotic technologies, nuclear weapons being one of them, for outreach purposes. From a technical standpoint, it doesn't matter much how exactly the Twin Towers were destroyed. Was it nanothermite? Was it something else? These are details. What matters is, as I said before, and as I hinted in my presentation, the censorship. All the watchdogs who could have stopped the 9/11 juggernaut failed to do it, most probably on purpose and in close coordination, meaning the wolf is in charge of the henhouse. You name Amnesty International, they censored 9/11. They don't give a darn for 2,000 honest civilians killed in the Twin Towers. But a scoundrel gets executed for killing 10 people in Texas. Oh, they write letters to the governor. That's just the way the 9/11 censorship works. That's what matters. And besides, once you are on the street trying to get people to accept the possibility that 9/11 was a false flag and that there was a controlled demolition of the World Trade Center, it's hard enough for them to accept that idea. If on top of it, I force them to say, oh, by the way, there was also exotic technology used that mainstream engineers know nothing about because, etc., and I start vomiting about it and rambling. Well, what I'm asking people is to believe not one, but two things that are difficult to believe. I'm setting up myself for failure. Besides, I don't remember who was the well-known 9/11 scholar who said this. I want to say Richard Gage, but I'm not, because it may not be. It cannot be excluded that some nuclear device was blown up inside the Twin Towers. Why not? It cannot be excluded that some directed energy laser was used to cut some of the Twin Towers. Why not? But it doesn't really matter. What matters is that the whole world should have screamed controlled demolition, and nobody did. That's what matters. And that's really what, as I said before, people who want to fix and save the world ought to focus on. Over.
Thank you. Next, we have Norman again. Norman, remember to keep your question under 2 minutes and on topic. Go ahead.
Okay. No, you mentioned that obviously whatever happened on 9/11 was a false flag, and I agree with you. I agree with you that it was some sort of controlled demolition, but not in conventional means. Okay. That goes for the anomalies with the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, Building 7, Building 3, 4, 5, 6, and the ongoing anomaly with the Bankers Trust building. Okay. So the aspect with regards to it's not not feasible. Sorry, English is my second language. I'm from Africa, so I do struggle sometimes with the English. And you get down to the brass facts of what happened with all 7 buildings with a WTC prefix is not explainable with conventional thermal or kinetic mechanisms, especially when you look at the fact that there were people who survived under the North Tower, 16 people who survived between floors 2 and 22. Then when we listen to Wayne Costy's paint on thermite paper that he presented in 2023, where he couldn't explain where the inner core of the towers went, and he actually confirmed that there was no molten metal in the core columns, and he just couldn't explain where that went, where the flight data recorders went, or anything like that. That is subjects for further investigations. But all of that was covered in Dr. Wood's book and in her 2007 QTAM case. And at the same time, when she presented that.
Can you respond, Dan, please?
Why are you muting me? Can't I finish my conversation?
Please.
Or my statement?
Wrapping it up, I'm going to have to kick you out if you keep interrupting.
I'm not interrupting. I'm just trying to make a point.
Over the presentation with expounding, and I didn't hear a question there.
Well, I'm getting to it.
Get to it now.
So, number 1, Building 7 went down silently. The seismic reading wasn't in line with a 230,000-ton building hitting the ground. It was surface waves. The readings that were recorded, even though Richard Gage says it was 10 seconds before that, he doesn't explain the lack of a seismic reading. He's never been able to do that.
Wow.
Wayne and David Chandler's never been able to do that. Nobody's been able to do.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think I'll repeat what I may have not said clearly enough before. The mode of destruction of the Twin Towers is interesting, but not essential. What matters, the reason 9/11 matters more than the modern conspiracies, or other conspiracies that have produced much more damage, is that the censorship is so evident. I don't care which conspiracy you look at, alleged or real, the moon conspiracy, the COVID-19 conspiracy, whatever conspiracy, real or imagined, the censorship is much, much less easy to find than on 9/11. The virtue of 9/11 is that the censors are unmasked. That's why it's important to remember 9/11. But to get into minutiae, of the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers and what happened to building number 6, 5, 3, etc. It's interesting. It may even be important, but really people who want to fix the world and the world needs fixing have much, much bigger fish to fry. And then second point is when you want to reach out on 9/11, you'll find it much more difficult to add to the notion of controlled demolition an education on exotic technologies that mainstream engineers do not know. In fact, it's symptomatic that I volunteered at architects and engineers for 9/11 for many years. So did a couple of people on the call. And I don't think any of our engineers ever took seriously the exotic technologies of nuclear and laser destruction. You know, engineers are very conservative people. I don't mean in a political sense, but we like things that have been proved, and we reuse them and reuse them again. And to convince us to embrace a technology that's brand new, that nobody has used before, that's still in the lab, we don't do that. And demolitionists would not do that either. It's not just electrical engineers like me who don't like what's new and untested. Over.
Thank you. Next, we have Jean and Sandra. Go ahead.
Yeah, Stan, I was wondering if you knew what the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow was. No, sorry. That was a joke. And on a question that's relative to what you were discussing, if you could recap those types that you were mentioning, shepherds, sheepdogs, and sheeple, and who they were signifying, please. Oop, you're muted somehow.
Got muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, this is part of the advanced class of 9/11, the one that analyzes the censorship. Let me get back to the slides of it if I can.
Please.
Yeah, it is a good slide, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Let me get back to screen sharing. I don't do Zoom as often as you people do.
All good.
So,
and for nobody who got the joke, that was a quote from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow.
Okay, I believe I'm sharing again the slideshow. So shepherds are a code name for essential psychopaths and similar dangerous mental deviants who are pathologically egoistic and who have a drive to tower over normal people.
So psychopaths.
Yes, psychopaths and similar deviants. Those people have zero empathy. They are pathologically egoistic, pathologically self-centered, and they can care only for themselves. The only way they can survive in the middle of normal people is appearing to be normal. Let me here we go. This is that's what they would do if they could be themselves. And that's what they do when in countries where they are in charge. The Cubans know that, not far away from us. But they pretend to be normal, and they are very good at masking themselves. The mask I alluded to is known as the psychopathic mask of sanity, which is the process by which a psychopath pretends to be normal and is able to persuade normal people to work for him. The garden variety psychopath is a simple man. Many psychopaths are male for whatever reason, and his vocation is to seduce a woman and then make her living life a hell.
A perfect example would be Charlie Manson and Squeaky Fromme and all the ladies there.
It might be. Now, those psychopaths are the ones who spend half of their life in jail and the other half making people's life difficult. But smart psychopaths are of another variety. They wear three-piece suits and they can run large organizations. In fact, I made a short allusion to Trump being devoid of empathy, probably psychopathic. He's not the first psychopath in the Oval Office by far. He's just the one who has unmasked himself much more than his predecessors. And here I'm digressing, but since I'm in that class, I might as well tell you guys, Trump's unmasking may be a turning point in the attempt to shepherdize the United States, as I coined in a new neologism. The shepherdizing project is really a project to get the United States controlled exclusively by psychopaths. And by dropping his mask of sanity, Trump is sending a message to essential psychopaths who are smart enough that he's one of them and they should join him. So if it succeeds, the Trump organization will have a large number of psychopaths and other deviants at the helm who will control with an iron fist the sheeple, the normal empathic people who believe in Trumpism and think they are doing good by supporting that project. And since I'm on a rant, I'll tell you that the real problem is not with Trump. Paradoxically, as I tried to tell in doublespeak, is with Trump's opponents. They are the ones who should be denouncing Trump as somebody who's not just mentally unstable, but who actually doesn't have a normal brain, and that he may be influencing the bad elements of society into joining him, joining the federal government, and later turning this country into a replica of the Soviet Union, just bigger and better. Let me see, where is the...
I'm sorry, can you just tell me if you were being sarcastic or not?
Yes, it was sarcasm.
Okay. All right, I wasn't sure that
good since you didn't detect it.
Yeah.
You are the sheeple.
Yep.
I have a picture to share when you're done.
But are you okay? But are you saying that Trump's one of them, or he's not one of them?
Yes, he is. And
I'm hoping he's
not.
What is
special about him? I mean, in fact, at the high, nobody can be president of the United States these days without being an essential psychopath or a similar dangerous deviant. What is special about Trump is that he's unmasking, and that's a sign of danger. It's a sign that the sheeple, the ordinary people, have been dumbed down enough so they do not detect.
Okay, so do you think that do you think that that unmasking is intentional, or it just so happened that way and it happens to be a test of how people react?
Those are our questions.
Well, it's always a test. Now, it's not the first time. Obama was probably just as evil a character as Trump, maybe more evil, but his mask of sanity was much bigger. It was difficult to find that the man was pathologically egoistic unless you really scraped quite deeply.
Yeah, well, he was very charismatic.
Very charismatic, and he watched what he was saying much more than Trump. George W. Bush let his mask of sanity down a few times, probably at times as a mistake, but he got away with it. Ronald Reagan did that a few times, not as much as Bush, mind you. Clinton had a very good mask of sanity, although he was probably just as malevolent as those people. What's alarming about Trump is that if they get away with the sheeple not noticing, and more importantly, the organizations that sheeple count on to protect them from government excesses, Anti-Defamation League, Amnesty International, Libertarian Party, Green Party, you name it, are not raising the alarm that there's something abnormal with Trump's personality that goes beyond his defects of character. Maybe it's a sign that they can unmask him even further, or in 4 years get a Democrat in office who will unmask even further. And at some point, something will happen that happened in Russia in 1920 and in Germany in the 1930s. The shepherds, the psychopaths, will all of a sudden realize in large number what's going on, that they are invited to positions of authority over the sheeple, and they will do it. If we get to that point, it will be too late for the sheeple to react.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share something else with you while I'm on a run. I'm going to stop sharing and show you the book it comes from, because the man who deserves credit for this is a Polish psychologist named Łobaczewski. Some of you may remember the name. Łobaczewski had the dubious fortune of being a psychologist in Poland when it was inside the Soviet Empire. He and a few colleagues embarked on the task of psychoanalyzing their new rulers and the reaction of the Polish people to them. They realized that the new rulers were not any more communist than Donald Trump. They were psychopathic, and they used communism as a mask of sanity to fool the sheeple, the normal empathic people. And they created a structure of government in Poland and in sister countries similar to the pyramid I drew. Some of you may have seen that book before. I highly recommend it, although it's a hard read for several reasons. Łobachewski wrote this after being expelled from Poland and losing his research. He had the bad surprise that in the West, after he managed against all odds to write his book, nobody would publish it. And it took 20 years till, I believe, 2006 before a conspiracy scholar from Florida, Laura Jacek Knight, did publish it and co-authored part of it.
What was his name again? Sorry?
Łobachewski. You can read it at the bottom of the screen I'm sharing. You may want to take a picture of the screen.
Yeah, good luck spelling that.
What ponerology?
All right, we need wrap.
Ponerology is the science of evil.
Yeah. The science.
That's a term that he and his fellow researchers coined. They are also the ones who coined the name pathocracy for government by evil people. What I call shepherdization is really pathocratization in normal people's language.
You got deep there.
Yeah. I hope you guys had some fun.
Thank you for her. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Need to wrap this up because we do have a full agenda following the presentation portion. So if you could stop share, I just have one last picture to share that is relevant to your topic.
$39 for that book.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. I thought I was muted. Sorry. It's an expensive book.
Stuff. I'm telling you, the man and the dog are definitely working together. Oh, all right. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. And thank you for your patience with some of our participants. I ran out of patience. Sorry about that. But, you know, don't be a stranger. Come back and join us anytime.
You should look into that seismic evidence, 0.6 seismic reading for a 47-story building. You should definitely look into that.
Yep. Thank you very much. All right.
Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood. You should definitely read that book. It's worth what you would pay. So
well, I think
you should check that out.
PowerPoint presentation, and this was Dan Noel's presentation. And don't appreciate being off topic on this. So do catch us on the Rumble channel.
I don't think